The photo we keep showing you is on page 12 of the United Cajun Navy report. It shows 3 boats and more anchored side by side, boat number 3, the Palm Beach, and also the Triton, we believe, which is the boat that took Nolan to Horn Island. It's also the boat that reportedly leaves, according to the occupants, without Nolan. They claim they begged him to board their vessel, but he said no. Let me understand this. According, Caitlin Becker, according to the mysterious Katie, not that mysterious because her sister has posted and we've obtained her photo, we think, she says he left with his friends. They say he stayed with her. Okay, that's a problem.
Yep. That's a problem. And there are also quite a few friends that he had come out with. So the Triton that he was on, there were 3 or 4 people on that particular boat. That's the one that he had come out on, and the one that his friends say, we asked him to get back on the boat. He didn't get back on the boat. His phone was on the boat. We left. We took on water. We needed help. He said he was going to stay to talk to this mysterious, as you said, Katie. Mysterious Katie says that she talked to him for a minute. It was no big deal. Then his friends called him back, and that's where he went, and she just assumed he went back on the boat with his friends. The issue I think that we're running into here is that the friends weren't just the 4 that you're seeing right here. There were multiple boats, 3 boats full of friends that came out. So could he have been going back to a second boat full of his friends while the Triton was gone, or were they referring to the Triton itself? That, I think, is where the biggest bit of confusion lays.
Well, here's the problem, Nancy, is I keep hearing friends, but you realize that Nolan, he went out to Horn Island on a boat. You know, Warren Hudson has talked a lot. He's been with Officer Tatum talking about, his best friend Nolan and the whole thing. But first of all, Warren did not go to Horn Island on the same boat as Nolan Wells.
His phone was on the boat. We left. That is the official account from the individuals who departed Horn Island on July 4th. They say Nolan Wells refused to board. They say he stayed behind. They say his phone remained with them, silent, as the vessel took on water and limped toward the mainland. But a newly assembled timeline from the United Cajun Navy now places a photograph at approximately 4:50 p.m. after the Triton had already left, showing a young American male in blue swim trunks standing near the tree line. If that is Nolan Wells, then the entire narrative collapses in on itself, like a hole breached at the waterline.
I also just wanted to point out, too, on the photo on page 14, this is one that we included, even though we could, there's a young man that matches Nolan's description, and I'm saying it that way because we can't verify that it's him in this picture, and he's partially in it because there's a girl blocking him, but it's a young, slender African-American male wearing blue swim trunks from what you could see in the picture. According to the person that submitted that photo, it was taken at approximately 4:50 p.m. Central Time on July 4th, which would have been after the GPS data says that the Triton had left Horn Island. Now, that's only relevant if this young man in the picture actually turns out to be Nolan. We never could verify it, but we thought it was important enough to at least include as a possibility.
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. Please join us on Crime Stories and stream it first on Fox 1. When breaking crime news develops, we investigate it and bring it to you. Bombshell updates, answers to unanswered questions from cases making the headlines and cases you may never have heard of until Crime Stories. We go inside investigations with exclusive interviews, crime victims, families seeking justice, investigators, experts, and sources from within the case itself. Stay on top of the nation's biggest trials with us, including gavel-to-gavel coverage with real-time analysis. Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Stream it first on Fox 1. I hope to see you there, and thank you, friend. You are now seeing the photo that Brian Trasher from United Cajun Navy has provided on page 14 of their new timeline report. We're blowing it up. We see 1, 2, 3 at the forefront, 3 white females in bikinis, one white male walking along. Now, beside the woman in the bikini on the right, I see two people.
Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to the VerdictOrigin, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Here is the visual anchor. Imagine a clock face, not a clock on a wall, a tide chart. The hands are not moving forward. They are moving in and out, advancing and retreating, erasing footprints in the sand. Every witness statement is a footprint. Every photograph is a high watermark, and the official timeline is asking you to believe that the tide only moved in one direction. The problem is that the water does not lie. The United Cajun Navy did not conduct a criminal investigation. They did not have subpoena power. They did not have access to the autopsy.
Conducive to believing he knew what he was doing, but they knew what they were doing.
I know, it looked like Leonard Skinner sitting there. Hey, that videos from Officer Tatum's podcast, all this means witnesses to me. And do you remember in the Diddy case, there was actually a toll-free number for victims to call? There were that many victims, not that it helped at the trial, but that said, I think there needs to be a toll-free number. If you think you have evidence, dial the number. If you have photos like the United Cajun Navy is doing, they asked for the public's help, they got the public's help, and there's more to get. That's what is needed now. Every picture, every video. How often have cases been cracked when someone spots something in a picture they hadn't noticed before, or their memory is jogged by a photo or information they've seen online? I've pointed to this a million times. Brian Trasher, the Gabby Petito case. Her body would never have been found if it weren't for amateur sleuths. I believe their name is Red, Blue, and Methane. They were a couple out in the middle of nowhere in dispersed camping where there are no porta potties, no lights, no hookups, no anything. It's just you and the wild animals. I've camped and dispersed before. They're out there and they see a vehicle and they go, that's Gabby's Ford Transit. And they call authorities who would never have gone to this dispersed camping area, and they find her remains. That's how the case was cracked. Who knows what photo, what tip United Cajun Navy or law enforcement or the Nolan Wells team might get that might crack this case wide open. So that said, Brian, how did you create this timeline? I find it very interesting.
So, first of all, going back to your comment about internet sleuths, a lot of people consider themselves internet sleuths, but some people really are good. And there's one young lady who's helped us out on many cases, who was very helpful in this case. I haven't asked her permission yet if I could say her name, but if she gives me permission and I come back on, I'll be happy to give her credit for all the help she gave us. But basically, what we did was we took, like I said, we took these pictures, we juxtaposed them to, like Google Earth and satellite pictures of the island to try to determine exactly where they were. We looked at the initial coordinates called out from the, I think from the Coast Guard or from Marine Patrol when the missing persons report first went out, and basically just try to run these pictures against each other to say, okay, this boat's here now, it's not here later, and again, just create an index. We had to use some software to help us create the index of the pictures and make sure we put it into the best timeline we could. We included social media posts that, may or may not have been definitive, but this was happening in real time, so we thought it was important to put those up there to create context. And so again, just trying to, our goal was to take what we've received, put it into a digestible format that just about anybody could understand, hopefully. And if it's helpful, great. If it's not, then I don't think, no harm, no foul,
To Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, based on this timeline, and it may be refined as the days go forward,
what they had was a public appeal for photographs, videos, and first-hand accounts. And what they received was a flood. Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, Boat X.
Well, what we're seeing here comes from this new report from the United Cajun Navy, and you're seeing several boats strung together. This is one of the first images that we've seen of this certain configuration of boats there. They're all identified, one of which was the boat that Nolan came out there on. There's several others kind of anchored with it and tied up, which begs the question of where was Nolan when this photo was taken, because it's unclear if he's actually in it. What time was this photo actually taken? So what you're seeing here is, as you said, a potential pool of witnesses.
Hey, Caitlin, look at this. There's boat number 1. There's boat X. There's boat number 2. There's boat number 3. And there's a boat from which the photo is taken. Now, look in the water. Much has been made. Nolan Wells was drinking. Okay, well, apparently everybody was. They all have containers, open containers in the water. Okay, as far as I know, that's not a felony. Boat number 1, full of people. Boat X, full of people. Boat number 2, full of people. Boat number 3, full of people. People on the boat from which the photo was taken. Some of these boats tied together. You know what that means in my world, Caitlin Becker, joining us in the New York Post? Let me see, Caitlin, please. That means witnesses. See, when I look at that, I see witnesses. Other people say, hey, there's people having a good time. I see witnesses. Do you see all those people?
And a lot of them.
Who were they? Have they been spoken to? Have they been polygraphed? What can they tell me?
That is the question, right? We don't know from an investigative standpoint who has been spoken to, exactly who is in this photo, and what they have or haven't told law enforcement, because there hasn't been really any transparency there. But from what our reporting has showed, there have been dozens of people who have spoken to law enforcement as witnesses. But Nancy, we don't know if it's any of these people that you're seeing in this little cove area right here. And the timing, I think, is really important, because these images are taken right around, I think the timeline's about 3:30-ish, 4:30-ish, when the boat that Nolan came out there on leaves and starts taking on water.
Vessels tied together in a cove, occupants standing in chest-deep water, containers in hand, the late afternoon sun casting shadows long enough to anchor the moment in time. Nancy Grace looked at that photograph and said what any competent prosecutor would say: witnesses, dozens of them. But here is the irony that should unsettle you. Law enforcement has reportedly spoken to many of these individuals. Yet the public has been given no witness list, no polygraph results, no timeline reconciliation. The autopsy is complete. It is being withheld.
First of all, I want to thank you for calling this report what it is, and it's a timeline. And some people have called it an investigative report, and that's not accurate because, as you know, we're not investigators. And what we did, Nancy, was we asked our followers, say, hey, if anybody was there that day, you have pictures, videos, whatever, send it to us just so we can go through it, see if there's anything relevant. We took all that information and compiled it into just one digestible report of things we thought were relevant and could be helpful. Maybe they're not. Maybe law enforcement's already seen all this and it's nothing new to them. But we just wanted to be transparent about what we received. So going back to your question, the pictures that we received, we did not, as an organization, take any of these photographs. These are all images that we received from people who were trying to help us out and trying to help Nolan's family out.
So you asked the public for help, and you got it. You got a treasure trove of photos, and I find this one significant. Guys, we've got an all-star panel, and I would like the all-star panel to look at their screens, because I've talked about this before, Brian Trasher, and I'm frankly fed up with attacks on the United Cajun Navy. They're doing something, which is more than all of the haters can say. They're doing something. They have amassed evidence. They have created a timeline to the best of their ability. They have shared it with us, unlike the autopsy that is complete. It's being kept secret from us. That said, they're helping. Why trash them? That's, I'm not a shrink. I can't answer that. Let's look at this photo and determine what, if anything, we can discern. Brian, you and I have talked many, many times, and I told you about a serial killer I finally convicted on one case. The jury convicted him. And I proved a lot because of one earring I found in a particular location the victim was wearing an earring and the other earring had been sliced out of her ear, and I found it somewhere else, and I learned a lot because of where it was. Now, don't even bother to tell me that this photo that you have produced is not probative of something. The cluster of
The story we are being asked to accept is
Here's the problem, Nancy, is I keep hearing friends, but you realize that Nolan, he went out to Horn Island on a boat. Warren Hudson has talked a lot. He's been with Officer Tatum talking about, his best friend Nolan and the whole thing. But first of all, Warren did not go to Horn Island on the same boat as Nolan Wells. And we have heard over and over from parents and friends, he would, run with the one that got you there, right? So Nolan went with one boat and they expected he would return on the same boat. Yet we're now finding out that was never the plan. He was never going back on the same boat that took him to the island. So when we talk about this group of friends, Nancy, they were scattered on 3 or 4 different boats. And we keep focusing on the one with the bilge pump problem. But now, what boat was Nolan Wells supposed to be going back to the mainland? We know he didn't ride with Warren Hudson to the island. So what was he supposed to be on?
Brian Trasher joining us, Vice President, United Cajun Navy, on the case from the very beginning. Brian, do we know the time of the CETO call made from the Triton?
We do. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know it's been reported, and obviously the CETO would have the exact time of that recording and stuff in their archives. But it seems like it was after 3 o'clock, before 4:30, and we know that the tow was canceled because somebody got in touch with Bart Edmondson, who ended up towing the boat himself, being a good Samaritan. And of course, now that poor guy is getting, raked over the coals just for being a good, what we try to tell everybody to be, neighbor helping neighbor.
Now, didn't the grandpa call and cancel the tow?
Yeah, I think that I saw that report as well, and it may have been that somebody contacted him and said, hey, we got somebody to tow us. So maybe he called because he had a better signal and said, hey, they don't need it anymore. Again, these are all kind of, the things that were already out there. I don't think we included too much about that in our report because it had been reported on so much. But
that a young man vanished in broad daylight, surrounded by boats and people, and no one saw anything. That is not a conclusion.
Marie, you saw that. All those people in my book are witnesses. One of them is saying at 7:30, Nolan was nowhere to be seen. Now, I want to see the video or the photo again, because you want to tell me that this guy, Nolan Wells, hit his head and drowned and none of those people saw what happened? I find that really hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, and that's why it's extremely important that the law enforcement are not too proud to get help from the public. Like you said, if people are sending in videos, they should be using those videos to conduct further investigation. I'm praying that this is a situation like Brian Koberger, where the police department, they were being ragged and being called ranky-dink police, while all the time they were investigating and putting together a case against him. I hope that because all the time they were saying, oh, what are they doing? It was I think the DA had a long, big beard, which wasn't very conducive to believing he knew what he was doing, but they knew what they were doing.
I know, it looked like Leonard Skinner sitting there. Hey, that videos from Officer Tatum's podcast, all this means witnesses to me. And do you remember in the Diddy case, there was actually a toll-free number for victims to call? There were that many victims, not that it helped at the trial, but that said, I think there needs to be a toll-free number. If you think you have evidence, dial the number. If you have photos like the United Cajun Navy is doing, they asked for the public's help, they got the public's help, and there's more to get. That's what is needed now. Every picture, every video. How often have cases been cracked when someone spots something in a picture they hadn't noticed before, or their memory is jogged by a photo or information they've seen online? I've pointed to this a million times. Brian Trasher, the Gabby Petito case. Her body would never have been found if it weren't for amateur sleuths. I believe their name is Red blue and methane. They were a couple out in the middle of nowhere in dispersed camping where there are no porta potties, no lights, no hookups, no anything. It's just you and the wild animals. I've camped and dispersed before. They're out there and they see a vehicle and they go, that's Gabby's Ford Transit. And they call authorities.
That is avoid wearing the costume of a conclusion. Now the clock ticks. The friends say they left at 4:31 p.m.
How does it shift the timeline? Because there is a group of people fighting at 5 p.m. Who are they? The friends say they leave at 4:31. That should be able to be verified through GPS. 5 p.m. Nolan, according to them, is still at Horn Island. Is he? Because by 7:30, witness states Nolan nowhere in sight. So where was he? He wasn't floating in the water. He wasn't on the shore. If he had, hold on, Dave, to Joe Scott Morgan, if he had drowned, wouldn't he be floating in the water?
Perhaps. I've seen bodies in the immediate that will go directly to the bottom. And there are those that do in fact float. So a lot of it is going to depend upon the temperature of the water many times. A lot of it's going to depend upon, is there anything else out there that could, let's see, how can I put this, that could in fact impede the body's ability to float to the top, like beneath a boat. And as you can see, there are a lot of boats out there. So if in fact that had occurred, you can actually have bodies that will be caught beneath other vessels. I've worked cases like that where they were looking around for someone and they couldn't find them because the whole area was surrounded by vessels. And so there are a lot of elements that go into this, Nancy.
Hi guys, Nancy Grace here. If you are a homeowner, you've probably thought, should I call American Financing to refinance and pay off this debt? But you don't because of your low mortgage rate. That low rate, it's not saving you if you're drowned.
GPS data should verify this within seconds. A witness places no one at the island by 7:30 p.m., but another witness describes a group fighting at 5 p.m. If the friends were gone, who was fighting? If Nolan was not on the boat, where was he between 4:31 and 7:30? And if he drowned, as the preliminary narrative suggests, why would a body remain undiscovered for hours in water that dozens of people were standing in? Here is the ticking clock moment. At what precise minute did this become a recovery instead of a rescue? And who made that decision without ever interviewing the people still standing in the photograph? The moral refrain returns. The water does not lie. Then there is the matter of the mysterious Katie.
I didn't wake up again until a little after 11 o'clock. And that was to my brother coming in the room being like, hey, Warren's trying to get a hold of you. Warren gets on the phone and he's just like, hey man, he was like, hey, have you talked to Nolan? Anything else? I was like, no, I haven't talked to him, man. He was with that girl last time I knew. And he was like, okay. He was like, man, we can't get a hold of him. We don't know where he's at. And I was like, man, it's Nolan. He's probably just out somewhere with that girl. Like, get a hold of the girl, you'll probably find Nolan.
Okay, right there, I'm getting a red flag. That's from the Officer Tatum podcast who joined us recently. That girl, the mysterious Katie. Remember, nobody who knew who she was. But then later, Dave Mack, do we learn that one of the guys on the boat had been texting with her and knew full well who it was? Where did the name Katie come from?
Katie was known to at least one person in the group, and that leads you to believe there were certainly more. There were a number of comments publicly made by friends of Nolan that backtracking, claiming they didn't know who Katie was, had never seen her before, and then you find out, yeah, well, not only did they know her, but they were texting around about her. So there's a lot of missing information here, Nancy, and it's why you've said all along, why are these guys not on a polygraph?
Marie?
Just because we're having a lot of people coming up with a lot of different theories. I agree with Caitlin. Not every theory deserves the breath of air. It's not all true. I think it could confuse the search for justice when we're entertaining every single person who posts every single theory, even when it makes no sense. And I have to bring my friend out of probation and say that you can't, go according to every single piece of information you get. It has to make sense to warrant the investigators taking time to investigate. And the fact that they're not sharing with us.
The friends initially claimed no one knew who she was. Then it emerged that at least one member of the group had been texting with her. The name Katie was known to the group. The denial was not a failure of memory. It was a failure of candor. And when a group of witnesses retreats from the truth in small increments, you must ask what larger truth they are retreating from. The United Cajun Navy has been criticized for releasing unverified information. But there is a difference between unverified and unusable. An unverified photograph can be authenticated. An unverified timestamp can be forensically examined. An unverified witness can be located, interviewed, and polygraphed. What cannot be recovered is time lost while official silence calcifies into permanent opacity. A grand jury is now reportedly convening.
It's something. We've got something. We're not getting anything from the government. We don't have the autopsy. We don't have any information. Nothing. They've gone radio silent.
It's exceptionally helpful to have these things laid out in this way with coordinates and times and pulling in some of the relevant social media information while also noting that it hasn't been verified. It's giving us, I think, the most comprehensive timeline that we could possibly have. I mean, not to push back, because I feel like you push back so much on that poor man, but the rabbit hole is the internet. The rabbit hole is reading every single person's theory. This is concrete information, and when it's not concrete, it says this hasn't been verified. This is at least giving me, from an investigative standpoint as a journalist, somewhere to focus my efforts, to focus my search. The thing that stands out to me are all of the people, like you said, potential witnesses, but also how similar everyone is dressed. They're all in bathing suits, and all the boats look pretty similar to me too. So that, to me, indicates that someone who's saying, I saw this person on this boat, I saw that person on that boat, might not be super clear on that, because as I'm looking at this image, everybody kind of looks the same. All the boats kind of look the same, which does muddy the waters even more and makes talking to them so
I've got
critical.
to work with you before I put you on the stand, girl. No. You are not getting up there and saying, they all look the same to me. No. We would get the name of the boats. We would find who was out on the boat that day from its owner, and I would ask them who's on the boat. I would not rely, no offense, on your boozy eyesight from 30 yards away. Okay, no offense, Kate.
Nance, neither would I. Neither would I.
But there are ways to, contrary to what Mobley just blurted out, there are ways to find these witnesses and nail them down. If that photo is Nolan Wells, and it doesn't look like Nolan to me, then he's on the island at 7 p.m.
That is the hard evidence moment. Grand juries do not convene for accidental drownings where nothing is contested. And they convene when the state needs to compel testimony. They convene when witnesses will not speak voluntarily. They convene when the gap between what is claimed and what is known becomes legally intolerable. So ask yourself this: if the official account were coherent.
This is all unfolding as we go to air tonight. We wait for that toxicology report. We wait for the autopsy to be revealed. We wait for a witness list to be produced. At this hour, reports a grand jury is convening to amass evidence, much the way the Cajun Navy did. If you know or think you know anything regarding this case, dial 228-769-3063. 228-769-3063. There's been a lot of questions regarding this number that is the number for law enforcement. We remember an American hero, Deputy Sheriff Bradley Link, Lake County Sheriff's, Florida, just 28, gunned down in the line of duty, leaving behind a wife, now widow, Brittany. American hero, Deputy Sheriff Bradley Link. Thank you to our guests, but especially to you for being with us tonight as we search for the truth, aside from all the noise and the threats, the falsities, the enhancements, the alterations. The truth is there, and we will find it. Nancy Grace signing off for tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow night, and until then, good night, friend. Hi, guys. Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. And if you're on
Why would a grand jury be necessary to extract coherence from it? The water does not lie. Here is the call to research. Go to the United Cajun Navy's published timeline report. Look at page 12. Look at the photograph with the boats numbered 1, 2, 3, and X. Look at the waterline. Look at the shadows. Then look at page 14, the young man in blue trunks.
one looks like a female furthest away, but between the white female and the other female, there is an African-American male. That does not look like Nolan Wells to me. Okay, I'm going to have to bring in NASA to enhance this. Brian Trasher, does this guy have facial hair? That's not Nolan.
Again, we couldn't verify, but we could tell that it was an African-American male on the beach wearing blue swim trunks. We thought that was enough to say, okay, it's possible, but
those are dark blue. Skin tone, aren't those deep, dark blue?
It looks like it, but Nancy, I don't know if this picture's been enhanced. I don't know if it's been filtered. You know what I'm saying? So again, that's the whole reason why we couldn't corroborate, but it was like, okay. And also too, this does create a good picture of a flotilla of boats. So where if we were looking for a particular one, it was a good one to hang on to. So again, fully disclosing that we could not definitively say whether that was him or not. Probably not.
But we need it for the investigation. We need it. And you provided it.
Rule it out.
You got it.
Use it to rule it out.
Okay, so is this Nolan? If it is Nolan, this is at 4:50 and proves he's still on the island when the other boat, the Triton, leaves. I don't think this is Nolan. But that's just my own two eyes, 2020 and 2018. It needs to be enhanced. Joining us now, veteran trial lawyer out of the South Carolina jurisdiction, John Mobley, the founder of the John Mobley Law Firm. See, a lot of people would say, oh, this is a nightmare, all these witnesses. I would have a field day interviewing each witness separately. It's like a bonanza. What do you make of what you're hearing, Mobley?
Well, Nancy, I got to call it like I see it. I reviewed the report in detail. I don't think it puts any points on the board. I don't think it...
Ask yourself one question and answer it in the comments below. If Nolan Wells was already gone by 4:31, then who is standing in the photograph at 4:50? And why has no official source identified him? The truth is not a theory. The truth is a document that has not yet been released. The truth is a witness who has not yet been named. The truth is a timestamp that has not yet been verified. And until all three converge, the only thing we can say with certainty is that the official story is taking on water. If this breakdown gives you clarity, like this video, share it with someone who still believes the first version of events. Subscribe to the VerdictOrigin and turn on notifications, because when the grand jury speaks, we will be here to read the fine print.